Turning 30 with an empty bank account can feel like the entire financial game ended before this person ever got a real turn to play. Everywhere they look, people the same exact age seem to own homes, max out their retirement accounts, and post screenshots of portfolios that only keep climbing. For most of them, the 20s quietly disappeared into low pay, high rent, student loans, and 100 expensive lessons about how money actually works. Meanwhile, the person who is broke at 30 stares at a checking account that barely limps its way to the next paycheck without collapsing. That gap creates a very specific kind of shame, the quiet kind that nobody ever actually admits to feeling out loud at dinner parties. Social media only makes it worse because it constantly compares one person's messy reality against everybody else's carefully edited highlight reel. The whole culture treats 30 like a hard financial finish line, when in reality it is nothing close to one for the vast majority of people. But here is the part that almost nobody ever bothers to say out loud, and it quietly changes everything about what should happen next. Being broke at 30 is not a character flaw, and it is absolutely not the permanent ending that it loves to pretend to be. It is an emergency. And emergencies are never solved by shame. They are solved by something far more useful and far more calm called triage. When a patient is rushed into an emergency room bleeding, the doctors do not stand around lecturing them about the choices that got them there. They stabilize the body first, they stop the bleeding fast, and they save the difficult lifestyle conversation for a much calmer day down the road. Money works in that exact same order. And the person starting late needs to follow the same cold, calm, unemotional sequence of decisions. Therefore, the plan for someone broke at 30 comes down to 5 specific moves, done in a strict order with zero shame attached to any of them. These 5 moves are not glamorous, and none of them will ever go viral. But together, they quietly rebuild an entire financial life from the ground up. Most people fail here not because these moves are difficult, but because they attempt them in the wrong order and burn out long before anything improves. Panic keeps a person frozen and busy at the very same time, while a real plan quietly turns that same nervous energy into forward progress. So the first move is the one that almost everyone quietly skips. And skipping it is the exact reason so many of them stay stuck for years. Before anyone can fix their money, they first have to actually look at their money. All of it, laid out honestly in one single place. That means every debt, every balance, every interest rate, and every silent little subscription written down together on one clear and honest page. Most people avoid this step because the final total feels terrifying, like a diagnosis they would honestly rather never sit down and hear. But an unknown number is always far more dangerous than a known one, because fear grows the fastest and the loudest in the dark. Therefore, the person starting late writes every figure down, adds the whole thing up, and finally sees the true size of the battlefield. And something genuinely surprising tends to happen the moment that terrifying number becomes real instead of a vague, floating, shapeless threat. The panic actually begins to shrink, because a problem with clear edges is finally a problem that an ordinary person can plan against and attack. They can suddenly see exactly how much comes in, how much goes out, and where the money quietly leaks away a little more each and every month. That single page of brutal honesty becomes the map, and nobody has ever climbed out of a hole without first learning how deep it truly goes. From that day forward, this person stops guessing about their money and finally starts making real decisions based on solid, unflinching numbers. The second move surprises almost everyone because it tells a broke person to pause before charging at their debt with absolutely everything they have. Common sense screams that anyone stuck in a hole should throw every single spare dollar straight at that debt as fast as humanly possible. But a person with zero savings is always sitting just one flat tire or one broken phone away from a brand new credit card balance. Therefore, the smarter first target is a small emergency buffer, something roughly in the neighborhood of $1,000, quietly set off to the side. This buffer is not the retirement fund, and it is not designed to look impressive to anybody scrolling casually past it on the internet. It is a tourniquet, a simple tool that exists only to stop the next small disaster from becoming another fresh and painful mountain of debt. When the car battery dies or a tooth suddenly cracks in half, that buffer quietly takes the hit instead of another high-interest credit card. Building it fast can mean selling unused clutter, picking up a handful of extra shifts, or pausing every non-essential expense for one short season. The goal here is pure speed, because this buffer is meant to be built quickly and then guarded closely like the fragile safety net it truly is. Once that little cushion finally exists, the person can breathe again, and calm decisions will always beat panicked ones over the long run. That small sense of control matters even more than the dollar amount, because confidence is often the real fuel behind every good money decision. The third move is where the real financial bleeding finally gets stopped for good. And this is the step that truly changes the underlying math. High-interest debt, and especially credit card debt, behaves exactly like an infection that keeps quietly spreading through the body while a person sleeps. A balance sitting at 20% or more interest grows faster than almost any ordinary paycheck could ever realistically hope to outrun it. But throwing random payments at random cards feels productive in the moment, while it actually accomplishes surprisingly little in the bigger picture. Therefore, the person lists out every debt by its interest rate and aims all of their extra firepower squarely at the single most expensive one first. Every other balance receives only its required minimum payment, while every extra dollar they can scrape together gets piled relentlessly onto that top villain. Once the most expensive debt finally dies for good, all of that freed up money immediately rolls downhill onto the very next debt waiting in the line. This creates momentum, and momentum is the one thing that keeps a person moving forward long after their initial burst of motivation has worn off. Each debt that disappears frees up even more cash, and the entire process speeds up like a snowball growing larger as it rolls down a hill. Avoiding brand new debt during this whole stretch matters just as much, because a leaking boat can never be emptied while water keeps pouring back in. The person starting late soon realizes that destroying that worst debt handed them a guaranteed return that no risky investment could ever honestly promise. The fourth move is the one that broke people wrongly assume they simply cannot afford. And that single assumption quietly costs them a small fortune. Many employers offer to match retirement contributions, which is quite literally free money sitting completely unclaimed right there on top of the table. When someone skips that match, they are turning down a genuine raise that their own employer has already agreed in advance to hand right over. But saving for retirement feels almost impossible while a person is still actively clawing their way up and out of a deep financial hole. Therefore, the rule here stays narrow and very specific. Contribute just enough to capture the full match and not a single dollar more for now. That employer match can instantly double a contribution, which is a guaranteed return that no debt payoff anywhere on earth could ever come close to. For a person starting late, that instant free money is about the closest thing that actually exists to a real, working financial time machine. Compound growth then quietly goes to work, turning small, early contributions into something that looks almost unbelievable a few decades down the road. The math is simple and almost unfair in the very best possible way, and ignoring it means leaving guaranteed money behind every single year. Skipping it just to feel slightly safer in the short term ends up being one of the most expensive mistakes a late starter can possibly make. The fifth move is the one that actually changes the entire trajectory of this person's finances for the rest of their whole working life. Cutting expenses will always run straight into a hard floor, because a human being can only trim so much from a budget before the whole thing snaps. But income, unlike expenses, has no ceiling at all. And that single difference is where the entire money game quietly gets won or lost. A person can clip coupons carefully for an entire year and still not move the needle nearly as much as one solid, well-earned raise would. Therefore, the person starting late begins treating their own earning power as the single most valuable asset that they will ever actually own. They negotiate harder on the next job offer. They build a specific skill the market genuinely pays for, or they start a second stream of income. A better job, a hard-won promotion, or a marketable new skill can add more in one single year than a whole decade of tiny daily sacrifices. Every extra dollar they earn then pours straight back into the plan, quietly accelerating every single one of the moves that came before it. The buffer fills up faster, the debt dies faster, and that retirement match suddenly starts to feel effortless instead of completely impossible. But there is one trap hiding here, and it catches almost everyone the very moment that their income finally starts to climb back upward again. As the paychecks slowly grow, the temptation is to instantly upgrade the car, the apartment, and the whole lifestyle to match the brand new number. Therefore, the person who keeps their spending steady while their income rises is the one who finally turns a rescue mission into real, lasting wealth. Discipline during the good times is exactly what quietly separates the people who recover from the people who end up right back where they started. Put all 5 of these moves together in the correct order, and a situation that felt utterly hopeless slowly begins to look like an actual plan. Face the honest number, build the small buffer, kill the most expensive debt, capture the free match, and then relentlessly raise the income. None of it requires being rich, being lucky, or being 22 years old with a full decade of compounding already sitting quietly in the bank. It only ever required the right order, because triage was never about doing everything at once. It is only about doing the right thing first. The plan does not even care how someone ended up here, and it works whether the cause was bad luck, bad timing, or honest human mistakes. The person who is broke at 30 is not truly behind by a decade. They are simply arriving a little early to their own comeback story. 30 is not the harsh deadline that the internet constantly makes it feel like. It is far closer to the opening whistle of the real game. Most people who eventually build real wealth did not start with money at all. They started with one decision and a clear order of operations. And that exact same decision is available to absolutely anyone, at any age, on any income, the very moment they finally stop drowning in shame. Because being broke at 30 was never actually the end of the story. That it worked so hard and so convincingly to pretend that it was. It was only the quiet, uncomfortable, honest moment right before someone finally looked up, took a breath, and decided that this is where they begin.